describe to me the America that you want. What does it look like? What are the...
You mean by tomorrow?
Well,
Let's say I was king tomorrow?
Well, you seemed very keen on this idea, which I'm sure you're excited about. What I mean is, ultimately, you want to transform America into something that it used to be, or that you'd like it to be, or whatever. Let's not argue about that.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, let's just say you want America to be a certain way. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay. What does it look like once you've got to that destination? Once you've got to that perfect America, which represents your values as someone who's really interested in Christianity being the dominant force in society. What can you do? What you can't? How is it different from what we have to? Would women be allowed to vote?
I mean, to at least the degree that men are, but I don't want men to vote for the most part either.
Okay, so what Andrew is doing here, he's trying to avoid sounding sexist. He reframes the whole argument to this isn't just about women, it's about restricting voting in general. Notice he shifts from women voting to most people shouldn't vote. That is a different argument. It avoids defending the original claim.
I think it's a great idea.
But it would be equal between men and women in your view. Really? It doesn't sound like it. If you want household... Well, what I mean is, it sort of sounds like... Well, forgive me if I'm misunderstanding this genuinely. You'd like people to get married and to vote as a household, which I imagine would kind of mean that the head of the family, which is the husband, would tend to decide that. And if a woman isn't married, presumably she wouldn't be getting a vote partly for that reason. Yeah. Is that fair?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, what's wrong with that system? Sounds great.
I'm just interested in explaining. Well, it sounds great to you. I'm just interested in...
The thing is like, it's really hard. It's really difficult. When people think of things like, what's the argument against this? This is an immutable character. How could you argue that women shouldn't be able to vote or that men shouldn't be able to vote? It's like, well, at our founding, they couldn't. Women could not vote.
Andrew Wilson just committed an appeal to tradition fallacy. Dude, just because something existed before doesn't justify it now. By that logic, you defend a lot of outdated systems.
Well, at your founding, as you said yourself, you had slavery, right? So things do change over time.
Sure, but the thing is like...
Sometimes in a good direction.
Sure, and sometimes in a bad direction.
Oh, absolutely.
So the thing is like, the idea that they had there was that most men couldn't vote. There was no universal suffrage for men, including slaves, right? For the most part, were men. And women couldn't vote because most people weren't allowed to vote. Now, women, the arguments against women voting are pretty simple. And the idea is landholdership and force, right? Can women utilize force in order to maintain land? The answer is no. Generally, that takes men. So the biggest... if you're looking at feminism, for instance, you had the anti-suffragettes and then the suffragettes. But the anti-suffragettes arguments were way better. The argument was pretty simple. It just worked like this. You cannot erode or get rid of the patriarchy because you always have to appeal to it for your rights. And that's a fundamental truth. And since that's a fundamental truth, I've never seen a great reason why women should be able to vote. Because they can vote to send men to war that they themselves do not have to go fight. They are not beholden to the draft. Only men are.
Andrew's core argument. Voting equals deciding use of force. Men fight wars women don't. Therefore, imbalance. This is his strongest argument. Why? Because it's clear. It's principled. It exposes a real asymmetry draft. But here's the problem with that argument. It's kind of like a false equivalence. Because voting is not equal to directly sending someone to war. People don't vote on war directly. They elect leaders. That's an indirect chain. Not all men are drafted. Not all women are exempt in every role. That's kind of an overgeneralization. And Andrew just reduced the entire purpose of voting to military decisions.
You can say, well, you're not beholden to the draft, perhaps because you're too old for it. But you were beholden to the draft when you were not too old for it. So your time could have come.
Could you not flip this argument the other way around and say women are able to vote, men are able to vote on things that affect women that don't affect men?
Like?
Well, all kinds of things. For example, their right to vote. I mean, among other things. But, things to do with sexual health, abortion, all kinds of things, right?
Well, I don't understand. Abortion does have to do with men.
Okay, fine. I mean, it does, but it has more to do with women because it affects them more directly. But lots of other things. I mean, men could pass a law that women have to wear a headscarf, for example, right? So our votes affect each other. Mm-hmm. That's not an argument to deny the other sex the vote.
Oh, I don't understand.
Your argument is women can vote to send men to war. And
no,
my
argument is it's called force doctrine. My argument reduces to this. If you always have to appeal to one sex for your rights, right? Then why are you being imbued with the responsibility of that at all? Because women have to appeal to men for their rights, and anytime men want to take rights away from women, they can, like that. And there's not a damn thing women can do about it. And if you want proof of that, let me show you half the world. Anytime, collectively, men say women have no rights, they don't have any. And that's that. And there's not a damn thing that they can do about it.
Yeah, this right here is where the argument gets shaky. Because now he's not arguing what's right. He's arguing what's possible. And those are two completely different things. Just because something can be done with power doesn't mean it's justified.
So the idea that they can erode the patriarchy or remove the patriarchy or in some way get away from the patriarchy to be strong, independent women is nonsense. They're just always appealing to the benevolence of men. Always. And so I don't even understand what the purpose is of the vote for women. What is it? We can literally, via force, take it whenever we want anyway. What is the point here?
Well, I would imagine the point is to include the voice of half the population, which is naturally set on different priorities to those of men. And since we live in a society which is half female, it would be worthwhile to include their perspective in how we make decisions.
This is actually a strong response from Konstantin. Simple, but effective. Half the population should probably have a say. It's hard to argue against that without sounding extreme.
Why does voting
because it affects them as much as it affects us.
Have you, let me ask you a question. Are you aware that in the United States, we abolished alcohol?
For a period of time. I've seen some movies about how that went.
Who got that amendment passed?
I don't know.
Women.
Okay. Oh, no. If you want to have an argument about our disagreements with how women choose to vote.
No.
There's not
they
much
couldn't vote.
Oh, I see. That's what you're saying. Okay.
They couldn't vote.
But
they still got that amendment passed.
Okay.
The idea that women did not have influence or do not have influence or don't have moral influence on society because they can't vote is stupid.
So what's wrong with formalizing that in the form of a vote?
Well, I just told you the very idea that women, let's start with this. Do you want women to be able to get drafted in the military?
I personally don't, no.
Why?
Why? Because I've never really thought about it, but it's just an instinctive reaction, actually. I'd have to think about the exact reason, but I just don't think combat is what men do, I guess. It's a very simplistic way of saying it. And
sure.
there'll be women who I can kick your ass, and there are women like that, right?
Agreed. But not generally.
What I am not against women serving in the military if that's what they choose to do.
Yeah, but what about the draft, though?
But I don't think they should be compelled to, no.
But men should?
I think in some circumstances, yes. Like when the survival of the country is at stake.
So women get a privilege men don't get?
Sure. Why? Men get certain privileges too.
So why do they have equal rights? No? What privileges? Name a single privilege men get that women don't have access to. What?
You mean legislative?
Anything. Like literally anything.
What, in life?
Any aspect, whether it be governmental, social, women have all the privilege.
All the privilege?
Oh, yeah.
Now watch this. He's putting him on the spot to name one privilege men have. And this is where Konstantin kind of struggles.
Hey, when the Titanic goes down, who gets on the lifeboat?
Yeah, but that's a very narrow context. Who dies in childbirth, right? Like, I mean, come on, we're different, and
almost no women die in childbirth anymore.
Well, some still do.
Sure, but I mean, right. Some people die.
There's probably more women that die in childbirth in America than people who die on the Titanic in the modern world.
Yeah, is childbirth avoidable? You just don't have sex, right?
No, but what I'm saying is there are outcomes that are better for men in life and for women, and that's a fundamental difference between men and women.
Yeah, I understand, but I'm talking about privilege. What are can you give me any privilege at all that men have that women don't? Whereas I can give you tons of privileges that women have that men don't. That's what I'm asking.
Privilege. Well, I mean, the privilege concept outside the legislative framework is a difficult one.
Even inside of it. I'm asking for both, either. Any, in fact.
Yeah. This hurts his position, because even if his overall argument is stronger, not having clear examples makes him look weaker in the moment.
I don't have the data on all this stuff, but I would assume there are contexts in which men are more likely to be employed for a certain thing because they're more likely to be perceived as authoritative, as leaders, things like that. Although that has changed with the kind of woke agenda of the last 10 years.
And it works both ways. Like, for instance, preschool teachers, I would assume that people would vastly prefer that their kid go to a woman, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So it seems like that privilege is striped across the board. Mm-hmm. So, like, what is the... Why is it that women get all of the equality, right, but also get all the privilege? That doesn't seem right to me. That seems like it's backwards. So, like, I'm still waiting to hear from anybody ever. What are these privileges men have over women versus what women have over men?
And this is what Andrew does well. He controls the definition of privilege, so only his examples count. That's why he keeps winning these small moments.
So if you can go and you can be drafted, you can be sent off to war, right? And women can't, but they can vote to send you off to war. How is that not something which fundamentally needs to be addressed immediately? That seems to me like it's completely lopsided, and it's giving one class of people a significant privilege over another.
So if we allowed women to be drafted, you'd be happy with them having the vote?
Well, see, now we come into pragmatic problems, though. The reason that you said earlier, I'm against women being drafted, is because they can't really serve in combat roles, only in support roles, which draftees of men would have to serve in combat roles. The reason women don't do well in combat roles is because, well, driving tanks is hard work. It takes muscles, and you gotta, run the shells, and you have to carry hundreds of pounds of equipment with you, and you have to do all of this type of thing. And generally speaking, women aren't equipped for it, which is why we've never had a female Navy SEAL to date, even though they've been trying for like 25 years. We still haven't had a single one. They can't do the job. Now, what people always do is point to outliers, right? Well, some women can do it. That's true. Some can, but in general, they can't.
I guess, but when you vote for a government, you don't vote whether to go for war or not. It's the government that makes the decision. There's plenty of people who voted for Donald Trump and are absolutely disgusted that he's started a war with Iran.
I thought government was force. We all agreed on that, right? Government's force. Like, ultimately, that's what it reduces to. So when you say you're voting for force, and you're voting for force use. Why does the United States have a massive military? Well, because we're going to use it. That's why we're going to use it. And why do we have a draft? Well, because we're going to use that too, and have used it. And so the thing is that a lot of what we're voting on is force. We're trying to protect our nation from all foreign threats, right? That's why we have this massive military. That's why we have a draft. That's why we have the potential for mass combat. That's why we entered in World War II, right? It's why we entered, and there was a draft then. And we're going to institute a draft at some point again, likely. It's more likely than not. At some point, we're going to do it. So the thing is like, why do women get exempt from that? And if it's the case that you don't want them exempt from that, why is it that they don't go right to the front lines then and battle it out, like draftees have at least the potential to? Well, that's a fundamental privilege that is not being addressed, right? And yet women have the vote. Doesn't seem like they care too much about men's rights, even though we're supposed to care about theirs. Seems like they have a lot of privilege in society.
Is that fair, Andrew? I think a lot of women care about men's rights, actually. Look, there's a vocal minority which say that they don't and they hate men. And look, we know those type of women. But let's be honest, a lot of women care about men's rights. They do.
Give me like 3 of the most prominent ones you can think of.
Who care about men's rights? Well, I'm trying to think now, but...
Well, I mean, we've had feminists on the show who are feminists, like Louise Perry, for example. They're a different type of feminists to the idiots that you'd be spending your time arguing with, but the people who have a very sensible view of these things. There are lots of people like that. By the way, coming back, not to change subject, but coming back to your point, I mean, one of the things that doesn't make a lot of sense to me is, for example, yes, it's true, men serve in combat roles and women don't. But women bear children and men don't. And there's a huge disadvantage in all sorts of societal outcomes from a materialistic career perspective to spending the time to bear the child and then to nurture that child, right?
Now this is a good counter. Women carry children. That's a real burden. But watch how Andrew responds.
So What? Like what?
Well,
that's backwards.
No, hold on.
Yeah.
The gender pay gap discussion, which is kind of stupid in a lot of areas, is actually a reflection of the fact that there is a motherhood gap in lifetime earnings, which is if you're a woman who bears children and then looks after them,
time off and that
you
type
take
of thing.
time off, then over the course of your life,
Less overtime.
you will earn less. So that would be one disadvantage that I could give you, where women contribute a different thing. So you might say, well, men get drafted, women carry children.
It's not a disadvantage.
What do you mean?
Oh no! Oh, they have to stay at home. Oh, and raise their kids. Where's the disadvantage again?
Yeah, this is where I think he loses some credibility. Because instead of engaging the point, he just dismisses it. And pregnancy clearly has real costs, physically and economically.
The man's in
the men get drafted. Where's the disadvantage?
They die.
Okay.
They get shot in the face.
Yeah, and women earn less money over the course of their lives and have to carry a thing
they
that
earn
is a
more.
risk to their life potentially.
What they have instead is they now don't have to pay for daycare, and they can depend on somebody else's income, which is taking care of them. Oh, that's terrible. Oh my God. You get to stay at home and you don't have to do anything except raise your kid. Wow. And by the way, they're putting their kids on a bus almost every morning to go to a public school. They don't even have them for 8 hours out of the day most of the time. So like, how is this the most incredibly difficult job ever, or in some way requires them to have they're the ones who are privileged? You know, there's an old comedian who made this joke, and I agree with it. Any job you can do in your pajamas can't be that hard.
Bill Burr, favorite comedian of ours, but
okay, it can't be that hard.
He was joking though, knowing Bill, and now that he's married with kids, I think his perspective's changed somewhat. But I guess, you know,
I'm married with kids.
Right, you're married. I mean, you watched your wife carry the baby or babies inside her for 9 months. Like, that's a big deal.
Sure.
So I guess that to me would be one example versus the hypothetical risk of once every 50 years you get drafted.
In a 2-income household, it's a privilege that women get to stay at home. It's a privilege.
But we're not talking about staying at home. We're talking about carrying the child.
Yeah, but carrying the child has to be raised.
And most women in America then go back to work.
Yeah.
At a disadvantage, as we just
Well, that's
established.
not a disadvantage, though, right? They don't have to have children. You have to go out for a draft.
All right, this is his strongest argument in the whole clip. Men can be forced into war. Women aren't forced into childbirth. That's a real asymmetry. But he's treating childbirth like it's purely optional, ignoring social pressure, biology, and reality. So it's not as clean of a comparison as he's making it seem.
Well, women do have to have children for our society to reproduce.
Well, they're not. So,
well, I mean, they are.
I mean, they're definitely
Your wife
not.
is, my wife is.
Yeah, but what's the birth rate? We're under replacement levels.
I know, but you're talking about a side argument. What I'm saying is, in a society that wants to reproduce, men have to go to war, and women have to bear the children.
That's true.
And so why don't we just say, well, the men go to war, the women have children, that's why they both
When
have
are they going to start having the children part of this?
I mean, my wife's doing it.
Yeah, but
your wife's doing it, so shouldn't they have the right to vote? You're not fucking fighting war, are you?
Men, well,
nor am I.
But is there the potential for that through the draft?
Well, like just the potential for them to have children. You say they're not. Well, I could say you're not being drafted. Same thing.
No, you can't. There is no equivalency, and I can point out the distinction.
Yeah, the compulsion thing.
The compulsion, yes.
But for a society to work, men have to go to war and women have to have kids.
I agree, but you need to get to the they're having kids part before you can tell me that there's some equivalency to men being drafted, because they're not having kids.
And you're not being drafted.
But I can be compelled because I've signed up for the draft. Where have they signed up to have kids?
I think this is a splitting hairs argument.
I think it's not. I think that the idea that my children can be drafted, or I could be drafted even at my age because perhaps I have knowledge which would be useful to the United States military. They could do it in 5 seconds. They could bring me on. They in Ukraine, they draft 60-year-old men. Okay? If they need you, they're going to take you. And you can peel potatoes or whatever it is they need, right? Women do not have to do that. They do not have to sign up for selective service.
Yeah.
They are not compelled and will never be compelled.
It's asymmetrical in that way.
They can avoid pregnancy, though, right? And if you're saying that they have a duty to have children.
I'm not saying they have a duty.
But you have a duty to go fight a war if you get drafted.
Correct.
Oh, okay. And this is fair how? Where do we get to the fairness?
Well, not everything has to look exactly symmetrical.
This is true, but it's not strong enough. He's basically saying things aren't equal, but not fully explaining why that still justifies equal rights.
But your argument initially was, where's a privilege that men enjoy and women don't? Well, I would argue in a functioning society where we want to reproduce, women end up with the burden of childbearing and child rearing in a way that men don't. I think it's a fairly simple and obvious argument, right?
And yet they're privileged when it comes to custody and divorces. They're privileged when it comes to child support. They're privileged when it comes to alimony. They're privileged when it comes to all of these things. They have every advantage when it comes to having the child. And so it's like,
It's
no.
a different argument. Now, what I'm saying is the burden of bearing the child is uniquely with women in the same way that the burden of fighting in war is uniquely with men.
So it's an ontological argument. The nature of woman is to have children, nature of men is to go to war.
Right. And so...
Then the woman needs to be fulfilling her nature then, right?
Well, my woman is, and so is yours,
Yes,
right?
but most
So
women
I would
aren't.
insist for my woman to have the right to vote on that basis, that she's contributing, frankly, at this point, way more than I am.
Drafting's collective, right?
Yeah.
So then the duty's collective.
Yeah.
Then why isn't childbirth?
I don't understand. You're saying for women to have the right to vote, they must have a duty to bear children.
Yeah, well, if you're saying that there's a duty for men to go to war, and you're saying that the reason that they do is because that's their ontological nature, and the ontological nature of women is to have children, okay, I can concede that argument. But we just ran into a problem then, because if one is collective and then the other is collective, why do I have to fulfill my duty, but they don't have to fulfill theirs?
Well, I never said that I thought it was a collective duty for women to have children. It's...
But it's a collective duty for men to go.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, then again, that sounds like privilege.
Yeah.
And this is the gotcha moment Andrew was building toward. It definitely sounds like he wins, but only because he framed the entire argument around force and obligation.
Well, in the same way that fire safety in your own house is a personal thing that you do, but if there's a fire in the neighborhood, it's the collective duty of the neighbors to get together and try and put it out, right? There's a different... Something can
Do
be...
you go to jail if you don't do that?
Yeah. Look, I agree with you. The compulsion element is different, but not everything is exactly the same.
I'm not even asking, like, I agree with you. Getting drafted and having babies is different. We can agree with that, right?
Both important, though, right? For
Both
society.
important. But the idea here that we are talking about, which should be equal, is the idea of duty. If we're talking about the compellence of you, if your country drafted you, even if you're in terrible shape, and they told you, look, we're in a collective war effort and we need you, and you're going to come in here and just cook food because our soldiers need food, right? Are you going to go do it?
I'd do it voluntarily, to be honest, but yeah.
Yeah, you would do it.
I wouldn't be very useful, but yeah.
Now,
Terrible cook,
if we have a compelling duty that men have an ontological function, only men can do this, therefore they should. Why does that duty not apply the other way? That to me is inconsistent, and it's a hole in the worldview. It makes no sense to me.
I agree with you, it's inconsistent, but that's because the acts are not equivalent. Like, not everything is the same. I think in order for the defense of the realm, so to speak, you'll have to compel all the men to fight in certain very
Where do those men come from?
Women, right.
So then one duty's being fulfilled?
No, I'm all with you in terms of we need a higher birth rate. I just don't think duty is the way to get there. Anyway, wait,
couldn't you just, I'll just wrap with this.
Yeah, it's just,
but
it's a time thing.
When you say duty,
yeah,
can't you instill the ideas of duty and honor even absent legislation, through propaganda, things like that?
Sure. Yeah.
Those are the routes that I would be more apt to move towards.
Well, yeah, to be honest with you, man, this is the thing is like, actually, a lot of this discourse, I think, is misguided because the vast majority of women actually do want to have kids, but there are circumstances in their life which make them less likely to do so.
I agree.
And so you made this point yourself, there are countries, they're not having as many results as people would like to think, unfortunately, places like Hungary. But I think the way to get people to have more kids is to get obstacles out of their way, not to compel them through the draft system. Like, here's your ticket, have 2 kids. You know what I mean? I don't think that's going to work, but it seems we agree on that. Anyway, Andrew, it's been great having you on.
You too, guys. I really appreciate it.
Honestly, this debate comes down to one thing. Are rights based on what you do for society, or just the fact that you're part of it? Because if you tie rights to obligation or force, you can justify taking them from anyone. And that's where this argument starts to fall apart.